Plastic may contain chemical contaminants from manufacture alone with many additives to give them characteristics desired by producer, such as inflammable, more flexible, grease resistant, sterile, or to create many other properties. Many of these additives are toxic and they leak from product during use and can be released during recycling and from recycling product. In many countries in Africa especially, but also beyond, the sale of plastic product is not subject to specific regulation. However, these plastic products such as children's toys, air accessories, office supplies, and kitchen utensils can contain a very high level of harmful chemicals. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. On behalf of the International Pollutant Elimination Network and the Biodetection System, I am pleased to welcome all of you to this global webinar. It's wonderful to see you again. Those of you who have been faithfully attending IPEN webinar series, and for those who are joining for us for the first time, a most pleasant welcome. A special thanks to African delegates who have accepted our invitation to join this webinar. I am Achille Nganke. I am working as IPEN Regional Coordinator for Francophone Africa, and I will be your moderator for this webinar. I am joining from Cameroon, Yaoundé City. Before we begin the presentation, a few reminders. This webinar is being recorded and the recording will be made public on IPEN YouTube channel. Language interpretations for Arabic, French, Portuguese, Bahasa, Indonesian, and Russian are available. You may click on the interpretation button down below and choose the language of your choice. I would like to invite all of you to complete our post-webinar survey, which will be available at the end of this webinar. Please also stay until the end to participate in the question and answer session with our speakers. We have an excellent lineup of speakers today. We are all renewed experts in their respective field. But before we dive into the presentation, I would like to welcome Dr. Tendese Almeria, IPEN co-chair. Tendese?
Yes, Achille. Thank you very much. Thank you, Achille. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Tadesse Amerra, one of the co-chairs of IPEN. For those of you who are attending IPEN's webinar for the first time or who are introduced about IPEN for the first time, I have a couple of slides to show you. Maybe the organizers may display the slides. Yeah, so for those of you who may not know IPEN, IPEN is an umbrella organization of more than 500 participating organizations, public interest, civil society organizations, and its mission is working for a toxic-free future for all, for everyone. And we have linked local, regional, and global efforts to prevent harm from chemicals and waste. And as you can see the picture of the world, IPEN reaches in all regions, and our approach is globalizing local concerns and localizing global policies. When we see some of the problems at local level, we take those problems at the international policy dialogue arena, and we push a policy, an international global policy to be formulated. And after that policy is formulated, we bring nationally and we nationalize it. We work with the national government to nationalize global policy. And then we don't stop there. We bring those nationalized policies for implementation at the grassroots level. So this reiterating cycle of local, global, local is IPEN's approach. We don't stop at the upper stage, and we don't stop also at the grassroots. We link the whole policy chain by taking the global to the local and the local to the global, as you see it from the picture. As you see from this and from today's agenda of discussion, plastics most of the time are discussed as if they are only a waste management crisis of our era, but plastics are not only a waste management problem. They are associated with hazardous chemicals. By hazardous chemicals, we mean all types of chemicals that are added as plasticizers and as other additives. So we are dealing with hazardous chemicals, not really as municipal ordinary wastes. And these chemicals are faced by the public and the environment from extraction and production to the disposal and even to back to the recycling. And in Africa, as we know, we have lots of recycled plastics. And recently we conducted also some research on some utensils which are used for day-to-day activities in the kitchen and as stationaries, and also as ornaments and toys. And these are full of highly polluting and hazardous chemicals within them. So Africa could not be a dump site forever. And this is one of the approaches that we are taking in order to alert and in order to find also ways of mitigating this hazard from plastic recycling. As you see from the from this slide, IPEN has published a number of studies, publications about plastics, and we saw lots of contents in the recycled plastics in different parts of the world. So today's agenda is about the recycling of these hazards, because we say hazard during recycling processes. Whatever you are taking in is going to be coming out. So toxics in is toxics out, and the hazard of occupational safety and health, and also the environmental problems are also attached to this process. So we are not encouraging really recycling hazardous chemicals. So we have a campaign to eliminate the toxic impact of chemicals in every phase of plastics life cycle: production, transport, use, and disposal. And this is also, this webinar is part of this process. And our approach, the next slide will give you the campaign link and also the discussion points. And you can also visit IPEN's website for further approach that can be revealed from the publications that we have posted. Having said this, I would like also to thank you everyone for dedicating this time for this very important issue. And I gladly open this webinar and I wish all of us a fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much. Back to you, Ashim.
Thank you very much, Tendesi, for these opening words. In reminding, Tendesi is the IPEN co-chair and the executive director of Pan-Ethiopian NGO. This webinar aims to discuss how the environment and human health of Africans suffer from toxic chemicals and imported waste more than in developed countries. Africa has become the destination of illegal toxic waste export, and toxic chemicals are also present in toll, kitchen utensils, and other consumer products sold in Africa market. We have 3 speakers to walk us through this topic. Let us now dive into the discussion, beginning with the first presentation. Our first speaker is Czechova. Jitka is a global research at IPEN. For the past 15 years, Jitka has worked as a volunteer, a local campaign, and later as a coordinator of international projects and as a research advisor in Arnika, a Czech-based NGO. Jita's work has been closely interlinked with IPEN Joxin, PCB, and West Working Group, and has involved conducting several studies on persistent organic pollutant in product, waste, and the environment. Jitka, over to you.
So thank you very much, Echel, for the introduction. Of the many thousands of chemicals used industrially and unintentionally produced chemicals, resistant organic pollutants are very specific groups of compounds, unmanageable or hardly manageable compounds that requires specific attention. Specific attention when designing strategies and measures to eliminate them from the environment. Those strategies always have to include phasing out of their production and use, but they cannot neglect the phase of final disposal of products containing persistent organic pollutants. When it comes to final disposal of persistent organic pollutants in product, closing material loops, cleaning up waste piles, and closing recycling of POPs from products into new items need to be set. Unfortunately and regrettably, the case of polybrominated diphenyl ethers, chemicals from the group of brominated flame retardants, has never taken those essential steps and continue to be circulating through waste to new products. Our story begins in the 70s of 20th century when brominated flame retardants has started to be massively used and produced. The production was initiated as a response to frequent fires, but fires started by cigarettes. Unfortunately, the solution focused on chemical flame retardants and has not been increasing fire safety related to cigarettes. As a result of those provisions and measures and application of brominated flame retardants into many products, we can be finding brominated flame retardants in many different products in our homes. Pentabromodiphenyl ether was historically used in foam filling of furniture, mattresses, car seats. Octa and decabromodiphenyl ether was used, for example, in plastic casings of electronics, televisions, in house heating systems. Hexabromocyclododecane was used and expanded polystyrene in our house insulation. Brominated flame retardants started to be omnipresent, and we are heavily surrounded by items treated by brominated flame retardants until today. Public interest in brominated flame retardants has been rising over time because brominated flame retardants are present in house dust, but they are also present in breast milk. They are known to have properties of persistent organic pollutants. Brominated flame retardants are very resistant to decomposition under natural conditions. They are able to be transported for long distances far from the places of their origin. They are found to be in Arctic. They are responsible for many adverse health impacts. They can damage nervous, reproductive, immune systems, and they can also decrease children's intelligence. Brominated flame retardants have also potency to increase danger of death in fires. All items containing brominated flame retardants are emitting brominated dioxins and furans when those items are being heated up, incinerated, or burned. So same happens when products or waste is being recycled and being heated in recycled process. Then the final products can contain also brominated dioxins and furans. As a result of long-lasting public concern, researcher concerns, parties to the Stockholm Convention decided to include polybrominated diphenyl ethers and hexabromocyclododecane into Annex A for global elimination. Unfortunately, penta and octa bromodiphenyl ethers was granted for recycling exemptions. It means that those polybrominated diphenyl ethers are allowed to continue to recycle into new products. Until today, there are four parties to the convention: Brazil, Japan, South Korea, and Turkey, who keeps their recycling exemptions registered. Fortunately, European Union, one of the main players of recycling policy worldwide, decided to withdraw their recycling exemption in 2019. Our story began in 70s of the 20th century, but unfortunately, brominated flame retardants continue to circulate our environment and our new products as a result of toxic recycling until today. Our families continue to be impacted by products present in our homes. But it's not only our families at homes, but the very broad impact falls into low-income countries who are recipients of toxic waste. Those low-income countries do not have enough capacities and technologies to deal with POPs in waste. And it's also our workers and at semi-official recycling workshops who are very heavily impacted to the toxic effects of brominated flame retardants. And last but not least, our children who play with the products made of recycled plastics can be also impacted to those negative health effects. We have several opportunities to close this toxic loophole. First, the four remaining parties of the Stockholm Convention should withdraw their recycling exemptions for material containing polybrominated diphenyl ethers. Under the Basel Convention, e-waste exports to developing and transition countries need to be stopped as soon as possible. Under the Basel Convention, environmentally and health protective limits for the content of brominated flame retardants in waste needs to be set. This limit is called low POPs content level. Only when low POPs content level is strict, it will not be possible to export waste into developing and transition countries. We also need to implement separation and non-combustion technologies to remove and destruct brominated flame retardants in waste. This is also possible to do within measures of the Basel Convention. IPEN continues to gain knowledge and information about impact of toxic recycling of brominated flame retardants into local communities and our families and children. In here, I will be closing my presentation with the picture of little Esther, who holds in her hands examples of toxic products which are made of recycled e-waste plastics. She holds Rubik cubes because we use this item as a mascot of our campaign, because Rubik cubes or magic cubes are intended for developing intelligence of young children. But in fact, the presence of brominated flame retardants in those items totally contradicts the intention. So I thank you very much for your listening and for your interest.
Thank you, Zita, for providing this important context on why certain chemicals were used in product, the reason for this banning, why these were allowed to be recycled into new product, and why the African region in particular is vulnerable of this legislative loophole. Our next speaker, Gilbert, graduated in geology, petrology in 1984. He got a PhD degree in geochemistry at the University of Kobe, Japan in 2004, and served as an adjunct lecturer at the University of Yaoundé 1 up 2006. He co-founded and is currently the executive director of the Research and Education Center for Development, a non-profit and non-governmental organization aiming to provide science and action in sub-Saharan Africa. He also co-chair of the IPEN Heavy Metal Working Group, member of the IPEN Joxin Working Group, coordinator of the IPEN Regional Hub for Francophone Africa, co-director of the African Center for Environment Health, member of the IPEN Steering Committee, and representative of the Public Interest Group in the African Core Group of SciCam. Gilbert, the microphone is yours for your presentation.
Thank you for introducing me. My presentation is about hazardous chemicals found in plastic produced in Africa. My presentation outline is on this slide, as you can see. Yes, we now all know that plastic contains hazardous products, including POPs and endocrine disrupting chemicals. Africa imports most of its plastic from different regions of the continent, and this makes the international trade of plastic a toxic trade, and also a long-range transportation and dispersion of toxic chemicals across continent. Yes, this slide presents the 4 countries where we make sampling for the study. Like you have Morocco, Tunisia, Gabon, Cameroon, Tanzania, Kenya, and Ethiopia. And on the right side of the slide, you see the figure of the main product we process that includes some children's stuff, some hair stuff, some office stuff, and some kitchen stuff. This slide is very important because it shows the hazardous chemical that we select to analyze in the plastic, because most of them are banned under the international convention, like the sum of PBDE, the penta PBDE, the octa PBDE were banned since 1999 under the Stockholm Convention. And we also have the deca PDE that was banned since 2017. We have also the sum of HBCD with the isomer alpha, beta, gamma that were banned since 2013. We also select the sum of NBFR that are non-regulated flame retardant. It is a class of 6 chemicals that will see the complicated name below the slide. These chemicals were analyzed in microgram per kilogram, that is 10 power minus 3 ppm. Yes, this slide presents the data from Cameroon. And you can see that from all the 6 plastic items that we analyze, the PPDE that are POP already regulated under the Stockholm Convention are present in very high concentration above the low POP content level that is 50 ppm, a value that is now pushed by the African region to define POP waste under the Basel and Stockholm Convention. And we can see also that for the non-regulated POP, we found them in this product in very high concentration. Even if we consider a low POP content level of 100 ppm, we still have some plastic that have more than this level that can be tolerated. And we remark that for the HBDC, that is POP, that we found mostly in the construction material, they are present but at very low concentration in this product. This slide presents data from the item analyzed in Ethiopia, and we have the same remark that the sum of PBDE that are POP regulated under the Stockholm Convention are above the now promote low POP content level. And we still know that non-regulated POP are also detected in some of these products, but not all. But as we mentioned earlier, the sum of HBCD are very low and non-detected in even some of these products. This slide presents data from Gabon, and we still have the same remark that POP regulated under the International Convention are present at very high concentration in these plastic material items. And we still notice that the sum of HBDC of HBCD is very low, but we detect them in some of the plastic. And we have the non-regulated POP that are still present in most of these plastic processed in Gabon. Yes, this slide presents data from Kenya. And from Kenya, we remark that we have a toy car that has very high concentration of the sum of PBDE. And we know that this is in contact with children, is about 250 ppm. That is more than 5 times the limit value that is promoted by the African region. And we still detect them on all other products that we get from this country. Similarly, we have the sum of non-regulated POP that are present in almost all the plastic that were processed in this country. The next slide presents the data from Morocco, and the remark is the same as we make on earlier data from different countries. Yes. Tunisia, this slide presents the data about the product from Tunisia. And what is interesting on this one is that we have one kitchen stove that have a sum of HBCD that is close to 50 ppm, and unlike all of the plastic that we present from all other countries, then for what is about the sum of PBDE, it is the same trend as we see earlier. And we've also found that non-regulated POP are present in almost all the plastic we found in Tunisia, we analyzed from Tunisia. This slide presents data from Tanzania. And the remark is the same, the common is the same. And what is interesting here is to note that under the current regulation, the EU regulation is proposing the limit of 500 ppm for plastic, for recycling plastic. That is mean plastic recycling for e-waste and for end-of-life vehicle. And the African region is proposing the 50 ppm. And you can see the difference that if we move the red line to 500 ppm, this stuff will become clean and allowed to be used by children and other vulnerable populations. This is the game around all this data and the limit that we have been presenting. Yes, the next slide is about the key finding. And the highlight of that is that the highest measured concentration of PBDE were found in office stuff, followed by hair stuff, children's toy, other consumer product, and kitchen stuff. The highest level of HBCD were found in kitchen stuff, followed by children's toy in sample from Tunisia. We also know that of the 47 products analyzed, only 8 products had PBDE level below 50 ppm, meaning that 39 of them will be considered pop waste at the end of life in Africa. Lastly, we consider that this level of brominated flame retardant, particularly the PBDE and the HBCD concentration, do not represent intentional use of this chemical in this product, but suggest that these new plastics imported to Africa were produced made from recycling of e-waste and or end-of-life vehicle plastic component containing high level of toxic flame retardant, and this is very worrying and concerning. Yes, this slide is about the challenge this data is presenting, because we see that most of these plastic items contain some of PBDE that are pop regulated under the Stockholm Convention, very high above the proposed 50 ppm limit, that is the low pop content limit pushed by the Africa. And when this stuff will become waste, we are very worried about how they will be handled, managed, considering how the waste are managed on the continent. Yes, this slide speaks by himself about how waste, municipal solid waste are managed on almost all countries of the continent. They are pushed in the dome, they are put in the dome side. Sometimes they are open burning, and you can see that when they are open burning, they are remaining bottom ash that can be very polluting. And when they are put in the dome side, the lixiviation is, you can see on the left side of the slide, can occur, and these are chemicals that are transferred to the environment. And this transfer of this toxic chemical to the environment can pose serious environmental and health effect that we will be hearing from the consequence on human health on the presentation that will follow by Peter. Thank you very much for your kind attention. And if there is any follow-up question or regarding this study, please do not hesitate to contact through this contact address. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gilbert. Thank you for presenting the result of these important studies. As we can see, samples collected in several countries in Africa, including Cameroon, Morocco, Tunisia, Kenya, and others, have shown the high level of additive harmful chemicals. This is also the reason why African countries want to protect the environment and the health of their citizens, and push for the establishment of the stricter low pop content level according to the base and Stockholm directive. We now go to our final presentation. Our next speaker is Dr. Peter Belnisch. Dr. Peter Belnisch is the Director of Biodetection System in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, since 2006, which is co-organizing this webinar today. He has been involved in testing POP, including dioxin and PCB, and endocrine disrupting chemicals since 1993, and has working as previous as many studies on this topic in several countries. His scientific expertise is in the chemical and biological analysis of all kinds of chemical and biological relevant pollutants. Peter is involved in many international projects about molecular and cellular bioanalysis for the environment, food and public health, and is a member of several expert groups, as well as national advisor related to dioxin, PCB, and endocrine disruptors. He has authored more than 17 peer-reviewed international papers, more than 15 dioxin conference presentations, and as well as several book chapters. Peter, you have the floor.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time to join our toxic plastic recycling. I'm very pleased to have the honor to talk today about toxic effects of plastic toys made of recycled plastic on human cells. My name is Peter Benisch from Biodetection Systems. Now, I will talk about the key facts about polyhalogenated dioxins, about brominated dioxins in plastic, the toxicity from brominated dioxins, about our in vitro toxicity of these compounds, about the potency factors of brominated dioxins. I will give an overview about the chemical and biological results. I will talk about the impact on the total daily intake. I will show you also the effects of endocrine disrupting properties of those toys and consumer products, and I will give you a future outlook. So you see here on the right side all those different endocrine disrupting chemicals and POPs, which I will talk today about. Now, the key facts about polyhalogenated dioxins are that they are since decades they are recognized as environmental pollutant. We have there about 4,600 mixed halogenated, chlorinated, brominated dioxins. And if you have to focus such a complex mixture of dioxins, you need to use bioassays to detect the total toxicity of those mixture. The halogenated have the same, the chlorinated and the brominated have the same type of toxic response. And there are several reports in some European countries that those brominated dioxins can add up to 15% of total dioxin TQ in the general population from the food. Now, we have now the first few studies published about these brominated dioxins in plastic, but this is actually since a long time known that we have brominated dioxins in plastics. Already Hamed I showed in 2001 and Takigami in 2008 that we know that we have highly brominated dibenzofurans in such plastic. And we know also from fly ashes and from bottom ashes that we find those mixed halogenated dioxins furans. And also Sindiku published in 2015 that we find this in e-waste plastic in Nigeria. So it is well known. Now, there's a lot of written about the toxicity from brominated dioxins because the Environmental Health Criteria 205 on the EPCS is the Cancer Submission, Cancer Society. They have published this already a couple of years ago. In general, we know that they have very similar toxicity to the chlorinated dioxin. This means we have altered cognitive functions, we have altered immune system, cancer. These are the typical toxicity endpoints from the dioxins. And of course, we know that children are vulnerable to those dioxin exposure. Now, we have published many years ago, about 20 years ago, we published already, and before even that, Stephen said before, that those polyhalogenated dioxins, they have a very similar toxicity to each other. And we say that if the TCD is 1, we published here in 2003, that you see all the others are very similar to that. So we have a wide range of 2,378 brominated dioxins, which have a similar toxicity than the chlorinated ones. And this is also agreed. And it's, of course, this makes us concerned for such children eating such plastic in their mouths. Now, we are using the DA colors technology for the dioxin, which is basically based on a red liver cell line, but also in this study, we used the human cell line for testing those, as well as the endocrine disrupting chemicals on the human sarcoma cell line. So in this bioassay, we are these pollutants, they are entering the cell line, lead to a stress. And if you add then a luciferase or luciferin, then you can measure light. And this light is direct proportional to the amount of pollutants which are taken up from the cell line. And this can be dioxins, this can be brominated diphenylated PBDEs, tetrabromobisphenol R, or any complex mixture of non-intended substances. Now, these are in these days, of course, fully automated systems. What we are using, we have robots to seed these human cells on 96 well plates, and then we have an exposure robot from Hamilton who puts that pollutants on the cell lines, and then we have a high throughput robotic system on the right side, which is a luminometer detecting then the activity from that compounds. Now, the first steps was, of course, to see how toxic are those brominated dioxins compared to the chlorinated dioxins in those bioassays. And you see here for the DA human colors that they are very significant active, and they have values between 0.117 to 1.1 for those different polybrominated dioxins and furans. So very similar toxicity. You see also dose response curve very similar. So then the first study was with Arnika was then to test from a wide range of countries, a wide range of black plastic, as you see here, hair clips, coat hangers, scissors, gun, and pistols. And this we published then also in the paper from Clémence Bodine and us last year. And you see here on the left side, the chemical results from the concentration was between 5,500 to 380,000. If you transform this to toxic equivalents, you see here that the chemical TQ is very similar to the bioassay TQ, which means actually that the 17 brominated dioxins are quite very dominant in that analysis. And most of the toxicity is coming from the hepta and octafurans. And the bioassay is very suitable, as you can see the results here in the middle. Now, if you look at the chemical congener profile, you see is the heptafuran and octafuran dominating that and causing those toxicity also in the bioassay. Now, the next step was then to calculate what would be the total daily intake from that contaminated toys. So now, if you assume that a baby would take 8 milligrams per day of scrap of plastic material, then this would lead to an average TQ and sample toys of around 1,000 picogram TQ per gram of plastic. And this would lead then to an average TQ well scrapped material from plastic toys with 7.7 picogram TQ per milligram per day. And now, if you look at a 12-month-old child and 9 kilogram body weight, then this would be around 0.9 picogram TQ per gram body weight and day, which if you look at the data for the total food intake, which is at the moment discussion and regulated, it's 1 picogram TQ per gram, which is very similar. Now, if you look now the TDI from different children from 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, and 36 months age, then you feel that all of them are higher than the recommended tolerable daily intake for diets of 0.28 picogram TQ per kilogram body weight. So we believe that this is really a significant impact and often even higher than the recommended TDI, what we see here from that toxic toys. We also tested those materials for the endocrine disrupting properties. As you can see here, at first we tested with the cytotoxicity columns, then with the estrogenic columns and the inhibition of the male hormone, the anti-IR columns. And you see that all of those plastic toys and consumer products, they showed significant effects for endocrine disrupting properties in those bioassays. Those bioassays are actually also OECD approved, TG455 for the estrogen columns and TG458 for the anti-IR columns. So these are well-known bioassays for testing such endocrine disrupting properties. Now, you can also, our tests are quantitative tests. So if you quantify them in estradiol equivalents, you will see that the levels are between 4 and 45 nanogram E2 per gram product. Now, if you consider the regulated phthalates in the plastic guideline, which are on 0.1%, you can transform this concentration with the potency factors into estradiol equivalents and flutamide equivalents, and then you have a kind of proposed trigger value. Then you see here that in case of the female hormone activation, there will be the hair clip on the coating higher than those proposed trigger values from us. And in case of the inhibition of the male hormone anti-IR collox, even all of those plastics and consumables would be above such a proposed trigger value. What we know is that in such plastic products, there is also a lot of tetrabromobisphenol A. Now, in this study, we did know the chemical analysis results, and then you can see here in the middle, and the value were between 7.6 and 836 microgram tetrabromobisphenol A per gram product. Now, we have also a bioassay for that, which is called TTR collox, which is actually measuring the inhibition of the thyroid hormone transport protein. And we did test those extracts as well as the bioassay. And also the range is very similar, 3.8 to about 400, which shows that tetrabromobisphenol A here is the main inducer of the thyroid transport hormone inhibition. And is certainly very important first to evaluate also for this toxic endpoint. And you see here also in this graphic that actually there's a very similar result between the chemical analyzed tetrabromobisphenol A concentration and the bioanalytical tetrabromobisphenol A concentration in the TTR collox. Now, please let me give now a future outlook. As we showed today, there are significant levels of these polybrominated dioxins in those children toys and ranging from 5,600 to 386,000 picogram per gram, or 60 to 3,800 picogram WHOTQ per gram. The measured brominated dioxin levels were on the scale found in a variety of hazardous waste, for example, in bottom measures, and many exceeded the proposed fluorinated dioxin hazardous waste limit of 1,000 picogram WHOTQ per gram. So we believe that the use of contaminated plastic for toys and personal care products is a direct route of consumer exposure in children and adults, not only to PBDs, but also for brominated dioxins. And we believe that, as you have seen here, more than half of analyzed products made of recycled plastic in our study with levels of PBDs that meet the current regulatory proposal of 500 ppm have been highly contaminated with the brominated dioxin. So we believe this is a signal for weak regulation of PBDs, which can pose potential harms for brominated dioxins. Now, as I showed also, these dioxin levels were also were quite high, but also the hormone-like effects for the estrogenic, which are the female hormones, for the androgenic, which is the inhibition of the male hormones, and also for the thyroid hormone transport competition, were found in these different toys. So we believe that also those toxicity pathways should also be more conserved. We also confirmed these high levels found in the bioassay first with the chemical analysis for the brominated dioxins, tetrabromobisphenol A, and PBDs. And these alarming values for such plastic products is also coming because the capacities and the possibilities by the chemical analysis is not so high for those polybrominated dioxins. Therefore, we need rapid screening methods as such bioassays to further examine the sum of these diverse environmental dioxin and hormonal effects urgently. It is also urgently required as a precautionary measure that children toys and products are tested and clearly indicated that such substances are found here. Thank you very much for your interest, and I'm looking forward to our first discussion later.
Thank you very much, Peter, for presenting about the toxic effect of plastic toy made in recycled plastic on human cell. Before move ahead, please just remind that you can use the question and answer button to formulate your question. We will come back in a few minutes. May I call Mr. Serge Moli, hello, who is our guest reactor today. He served as president of the 10th conference of the party on the Rotterdam Convention, and is a resource person on the chemical and waste negotiation in Africa. Serge, over to you.
Merci, Achille. Je voudrais, avant de prendre la parole, remercier IPEN qui a bien voulu organiser ce webinaire. Donc, demander à TADC de transmettre nos sincères remerciements à son groupe, de telle sorte que
thanks to his group for this type of initiative to keep on being organized. I don't want to talk about in the name of the African group, even though I participated in many initiatives and I continue to represent Africa. I am the president of the 10th convention of party at the Rotterdam Convention. So this webinar helps us see the new means of managing plastic waste. Unfortunately, we realize that the plastic solution is a matter of concern. Gabon participated in the initiative aiming at assessing the presence of plastics in many objects, and the study was presented a few minutes ago by Gilbert. And these issues are very important because children are the most exposed, and they are the future of Africa, they are the future of humanity. So we wonder, if they continue to be exposed, what will be our future in a context where traffic is becoming more and more important, where dangerous products, chemicals are disseminated? We wonder what will be our future. Concerning the level of POPs in products, this is a very important issue. Countries like Gabon, Ethiopia and Tanzania were studied by Gilbert in his study. This helps us have a picture which is not exhaustive, but for countries that have not had the opportunity to be part
IPEN de multiplier des
should really endeavor to, and I encourage IPEN to multiply such initiative, because this helps us advocate during international gatherings. For example, exposition to PBDE. This helps governments to know exactly what they are talking about when they are making their decisions. This is the first comment that I would like to make very fast, and later on I may take the floor again. Thank you, Achille. I'll give back the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Serge. Serge has been closely involved in several studies focused on soil management of chemicals in Gabon and Africa. A big thank to all our speakers for this informative presentation. Dear participants, now we are ready to accept questions. Please use bottom question and answer to formulate your question. May I invite the speaker to turn on your video. The first question that we have in our chat comes from Africa, Sierra Leone country. So the participant want to know if you have data in Sierra Leone, data about the toxic, plastic toxic in Sierra Leone. Maybe you better answer this question.
Yes, thank you so much, Achille, for that question from our colleague from Sierra Leone. At this level, we don't have data in hand from Sierra Leone, but we do believe that the trend we have from the data from the 7 countries that we present, it can be extrapolated to what is the situation maybe in Sierra Leone. But I do recognize that it is really maybe useful to have enough resource to analyze plastic or chemical in plastic from more countries on the continent to really support the advocacy and maybe the regulation that can be taken to protect the children and the environment concerning this chemical, particularly the chemical that are already regulated under the Stockholm Convention. Thank you so much.
Okay, maybe Jitka can add something else. Jitka, can Sierra Leone can benefit directly from toxic waste recycling?
Actually, IPEN has produced several reports on toxic recycling and data from not only African region, but also from Asia, Europe, Latin America are included into such report. So we already know that this practice of toxic recycling is happening basically worldwide. Yeah, so definitely we are open to share our other supplementary data. And to the question, how the countries can benefit from toxic waste recycling, I don't think that there is no way how communities or consumers can benefit from toxic recycling. Only thing that we can do is basically to separate POPs waste from waste streams. There are already techniques available for this separation. Yeah, those techniques are either based on total bromine content, So basically methods based on X-ray fluorescence can be applied, or there are very simple sink and float methods used in informal recycling sector, for example, in India. Yeah, this separation technique basically uses different density of BFR treated plastics and not treated plastic, because we know that BFR treated parts of waste are more dense. They basically sink, and this way we can separate BFR treated plastic in water bath. And then when POPs waste is separated, it's only techniques which can destruct or irreversibly transform POPs if waste, the techniques which can be applied. It's not any incineration technology, not cement kiln, not incineration plant, which has potential to destruct POPs in waste. Contrary to that, in incineration processes, brominated flame retardants can be produced. Yeah, so this is one of the many reasons why toxic waste, toxic plastics with brominated flame retardants should not be exported to low-income countries who don't operate with such techniques. Thank you.
Thank you, Zita. About the question of sharing the presentation, just want to say that IPEN will release this video on the IPEN YouTube channel, so everybody can have access of this session. Another question comes from Alfred. Alfred want to know if, especially that most of data show only problems come from importation. What about those plastics generated within our country? There any solution for that? That is question from Alfred. Surely in Africa. Maybe Peter can give element of response for that.
Yeah, I'm not the expert of waste recycling, I have to say that. What we see, of course, is that it is very important to have strict regulations, that we get rid of this weak export control, because we have, of course, guidelines in Europe for chlorinated dioxins, but we don't have any guidelines for brominated dioxin in eggs and then in the recycling chain. So there needs to be really a focus from African countries, I think, to build up also guidelines for polybrominated dioxins. And also we have no data at all. These are the first data about these endocrine disrupting plastic additives, which are different than there can be many thousands of those in that plastic. So we need really more thinking about how we can make the chemical regulations also with toxicity testing to make it more safe, because otherwise you will have a regrettable substitution. You know, if you regulate a few chemicals, then the chemical industry will come with new ones. And this is not so. We have to regulate the toxic pathways, that we don't get the known and unknown, the added and non-intended abscess substances in the whole recycling chain. And this is for whole Africa, of course, and actually also for Europe, to be honest. It's for the whole planet.
Thank you, Peter.
May I add on that?
Okay.
Yes, that is very important question from the African perspective, because we should not leave the impression that maybe it is just focusing on plastic that are imported from maybe other region to Africa. But the issue here is that we are giving a strong alarm on the fact that there is a urgency to stop the influx of the hazardous plastic in the continent first, because we also generate, there are some regulation or maybe policy in different countries that promote recycling or something like that. And there is a big concern about using this term recycling, because it takes many form and many practices in different countries, where we see that maybe plastic from electronic waste are burned in the maybe kind of open a space to produce maybe a tie or kind of. These are already things that are happening on the country, and they produce maybe some plastic that are used in the garden or something like that. But the priority of focusing on the import product is to try to close the tap of the influx from importation first, because this is the huge quantity of plastic that are coming through this way, through new product or through waste. So we really do agree that it is important to also see on the plastic that are produced domestically in African countries. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And I also think that now is also a good moment, you know, because the European Commission just started the Green Deal, the zero pollution, you know. So we have now the 8.1, 8.2 call in the European Commission this February. There's now really a tendency that also in Europe they will focus more stronger on that aim. What you all have here, IPEN, Arnika, and all the other NGO. This focus on zero pollution, I think, and Green Deal, this is the future. So I think also that in Europe, the people are now more open to discuss it again. And I also hope, of course, to hear also more from Asia about that.
Really important, Peter. Thank you. We don't have enough question. We don't have enough time for this session, but we can answer again one or two other questions. This important question comes from Morocco. How can small associations use the result of this study to inform authorities? Is it by direct advocacy or by information first through the media, or there are other means? Maybe Serge in Gabon can start to give some element of response.
Maybe also I can say something, you know.
Yeah.
I very often in Morocco, you know, so I talked to several of the agencies and the National Institute. We are actually testing the fish from Mauritania and from Morocco, from the harbors, for the dioxins, for the chlorinated dioxins. So I think the people are very, very informed, but really this is a very important question, what here is asked, you know, how to move here forward. And maybe, I don't know, but, you know, in Europe, we made a European Commission, so we brought all the European countries together. And maybe this is also something that you need, maybe more cooperation between the African countries. Because I think it will be not so easy to have one. How we moved in Europe was the export and the import. You know, we had Belgium with the dioxin crisis, and they exported it to the rest of Europe. So we had to limit the export. So maybe this is a way forward, that you work together, that you work more in an African association or Asiatic association together, and maybe you look for more how we get the products from one to the other country, and then you have the border inspections. This is what we do in Europe often, you know. So it's more the export-import. The other thing is, of course, the National Institute for Public Health. They should also be active in all the discussions. But I see the driver of that issues is often, at least in the most countries I'm involved, is actually often it's export-import. And on the border, they need some, and then you give recommendation to the industry to handle that. Because now, of course, the e-waste industry should take care about it. And also the people who are eating chicken eggs in those e-waste recycled cities.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Maybe you have another response that comes to Africa to this question.
Yeah. May I add to that one? That is also a very important question because, yes, how this data can be used from the Morocco perspective depend how the organization is operating and interacting with the different focal point of the Stockholm, Basel, or convention in the country, or SICAM working there. I think the first, there is no magic way how we can use, but it depends on the background, how the NGO operate in the country. It can be first share this data with the focal point to say, okay, see, we are now having toxic plastic in the form of new product recycling, maybe in X continent that are coming, and we know that these chemicals are harmful to the health of our population and the environment, and we now know that at the international level, maybe the African is pushing for strict low pop content level in the plastic for recycling. So that is a good opportunity to use this data maybe to support this strict low pop content level for PBDE that are regulated under the Stockholm Convention and the Basel Convention. I think this is one way to use it and to share the information. It can go from information sharing to advocacy or to media outlet or something that depend on what is the aim, what we use to achieve at the country level. Just
okay. Thank you, Gilbert. Thank you. Serge, please, you want to add something?
I think Gilbert just made a very important point as far as advocacy is concerned. For me, the problem in Africa is that people who have the information lack the necessary means to disseminate it. Why am I saying this? Because I worked for the government and in close collaboration with NGOs and the civil society. While doing so, I understood the challenges the administration is facing to address such an issue when all is a priority. When everything is a priority, no country can individually engage on solving an issue such as toxic plastic management. I believe an approach like the SAICM regime is the type of initiatives that should include all the countries. They should be organized to find an adequate strategy.
Serge, it seems that we have some problem in connection with Serge. Unfortunately, we are not have enough time. Just answer the last question. So sorry for that, but we answer the last question. Zita Han. Yes, the question comes for Jan Brenner in Australia. Okay, the question is that does this toxic plastic waste problem represent a potential to poison the circular economy?
Yeah, definitely. They entirely decrease credibility of recycling.
Please, just few seconds, Zita. Please, you have just few seconds to answer this question. You are supposed to close.
Toxic recycling is definitely decreasing credibility of recycling policy itself. So definitely separation techniques need to be applied to separate POPs waste from the waste streams, and the techniques to extract POPs from waste need to be applied as the final step in the process.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all the questions. We are really sorry we cannot answer all the questions that we have on our chat, but we can continue to answer in different IPEN themselves for those that IPEN POs. Dear participant, now I will call Roland. I will call Roland Jitka to give the closing remark. Roland, over to you.
So I'm saying I'm very happy to be with you, and I take my time to listen and to follow all the presentations, and really this webinar is very, very important. It's highlight many issues about recycling, plastic recycling of chemicals. So what I want to say for us closing remarks, based on all that I have said during this webinar, I see, or we can see, that in Africa, the topic we discuss is a very very issue for us, and many studies that were presented and the publications of IPEN shows the importance of the problem, how hazardous chemical affecting the health and the environment. I especially note something from Dr. Jibe Okupo presentation. For example, when he highlights, we saw the data of the key findings calling, and this data are calling us to see really the serious the challenges who are becoming real serious for us. So my question is how today our African countries will manage the toxic waste and the toxic plastic recycling. This one is a big challenge now. For if you hear the intervention of Mr. Moli, when he's he's from government and he collaborated a lot with civil societies. So I'm asking some of questions. So like we said, many African countries regulate the hazardous chemicals in child toys, for example, or other products. But what we have to highlight is that they don't regulate what goes into exported products. And if we see the global plastic production is growing rapidly, and it is expected to triple over the next 30 years. So also there is a problem about African government officials. Some African government officials, I'm not saying all, but some African officials assume new plastic products are safe. And but the problem is we have a little access to information about the toxic chemical additive used to make the plastics. And finally, like the discussion, the questions said, when you hear the answers also from the panelists about recycling, today we have to ask ourselves some questions also. Recycling plastic is a solution. Is only the solution. And it can be, what I say, it can be also a plot to enable hazardous waste dumping in Africa. And this is happening in our countries. So how can we protect Africa and the Africans? That's the big question we have to ask as stakeholders, as government officials, as scientists, researchers, all of us. How can we really move and see how can we really protect the Africans and the African countries? You see, we are talking about the children are very vulnerable. And not only the children, even we as adults, we are eating. We are the consumers, and if we talk, we take SDG 12, we're talking about responsible production and consumption. So all these things have to call us to the action. So my last word is, we need African leaders to stop the flow of hazardous plastic and plastic waste into Africa countries, and really put the strong policies to regulate and to control. And like some said, we need these data. Some countries, we don't have data. If you don't have data, how can we push our advocacy? How can we, as a civil society organization, can collaborate with the government officials to find a way to tackle this challenge? I think it is what me really I take as outcome of this webinar. It is very important webinar, and we need to really, if you go back to really start working on these issues. We don't see it, but it's really having a big impact on environment and on our health. Thank you.
Thank you, Holland. Thank you to highlighted some relevant points raised during this webinar. Holland mentioned some point. Maybe our speaker can come back of some point that Holland comment about. Peter, something to add about the Holland comment?
Yeah, very nice speech, Roland. Yeah, I fully can support that. That's how it is. You have to work together. You need more data. You have to get more policy, more countries on board and join together, and also start. You have to work all together from the university, from the education, from the young people. Make programs in the school, make progress in the university about POPs, about environmental pollution, about recycling. You work with the governments or the whole Africa together, and also work with the industry together, because also people in the recycling, they are standing also with everyday pollutants in the room, you know. So we have to also take care about those people, you know. So we need everybody together on board. Thanks for the nice speech, Hollande.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Holland. Thank you, Peter. Before closing, maybe Zita is ready to answer a small relevant question that you have in the chat. Everything that's important to share some element of response. Zita, you have this question. Can you answer it, please?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like also to thank Roland for her very nice speech. So thank you very much for your words. IPEN is definitely of support of your efforts. And I would like also to encourage governmental officials who are with us here on this call to join us in the work of a small intersessional working group on POPs waste, which is run under the Basel Convention. And this is the environment where we can influence the levels for POPs content in waste. And this is the measure which can help us to stop imports of toxic materials, of toxic waste with POPs into Africa and other regions worldwide. Thank you.
Before we end, our final reminder to kindly fill up the survey form after the session. It will pop up on your screen after the session, or it will go in your email. Your answers will provide important feedback to improve our future IPEN webinar. Thank you. Dear friend, dear participant, we hope you found today's webinar helpful for your work and your interests. Thank you for joining us today, and may you all keep safe. See you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Merci.
Serge, bonjour, merci.
Bonjour.
Beaucoup depuis Lomé.
À bientôt.
Bye.
Bye, à bientôt.
Take care, goodbye.